Welcome everybody to today's Meet the Funders session on the Together Fund. Today we are joined by Sarah from Canal River Trust, who's here to explain a little more about the Together Fund, which currently have grants of up to 5,000 available to support physical activity involving our waterways. Over to you, Sarah.
Good afternoon. Hi. First of all, thanks everyone for joining us today. If you do have to bob off at any point, don't worry, just drop me an email, which I'll pop in the chat later on as well. But any problems, email Laura and we can send you over the slides and information. So if you do have to bob off for any reason, don't worry, we can get you the information just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and the presentations. Once that's ready, we can begin. Let's have a look. Can everyone see that all right? Perfect, thanks very much. So, hi, I'm Sarah Ponting. I'm the Together Fund Engagement Coordinator. Vicky's also joined me today. So first of all, what we'd like to do is introduce ourselves. Vicky, if you wouldn't mind me putting on your spot, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, hi, thanks very much for having us today. So I work as Participation Health and Wellbeing Project Manager. For the last 2 years, we've been distributing the Tackling Inequalities funding, and Sarah's going to introduce our new Together Fund.
Thanks very much. So I'm Sarah, and prior to this, I was on the Green Recovery Challenge Fund in Manchester, which introduced me to the wonderful city of Manchester and its surrounding areas. Working with a lot of residents and communities, and I saw part of that was introducing me to the brilliant potential that is there, as well as some of the barriers. Now, while we're here, I'd also like to introduce another member of our team, Jane Hargreaves. Jane, would you mind introducing yourself briefly, please?
Hi everyone, so yeah, I'm Jane Hargreaves and I'm going to be supporting Sarah with the sort of admin for this project. So yeah, nice to meet you all.
Thanks very much, Jane. So I understand that not all of you may be familiar with Canal River Trust, so I'm going to provide a brief background into that. If you'd like to know anything else or more in depth about what the charity gets up to, if you'd like to go to canalrivertrust.org.uk, there is a massive amount of things we get up to across the country, as well as volunteering, community events. But today we're going to focus on the Together Fund. So Canal River Trust is a Waterways and Wellbeing charity. We cover over 2,000 miles of canal in England and Wales. And the reason we're Waterways and Wellbeing charity is because we go through a lot of communities and residents which benefit directly from that green and blue space. So our motto is life's better by water. And if you've ever spent any time by the canal, I'd very much hope you'd agree with me. Our canals are amazing spaces to relax, commute, use as a getaway from the city, and there's a massive amount that they can contribute as a free resource to everyone. So as you know, with the pandemic, there has been increasing impact on our well-being, especially in areas where you can't get out and about, that you can't get resources, and with the increasing rates of obesity, stress, declining mental health, we are hoping through this fund and through what we do as a charity to improve the well-being of millions of people. We've made significant headway in this through our studies showing that time by water and time volunteering with us, or even just walking down the canal, improves your mental and physical well-being. So our canals and rivers run through some of the most heavily populated communities in England and Wales, and this provides this accessible space. Psychological impacts of the epidemic on the population has had a huge detrimental effect. I don't need to tell you that, both on the short term and the long term, affecting populations also disproportionately. Mental and physical well-being are interlinked, and our waterways provide that free resource to improve it. So this is a study done quite a while ago in 2019. Now, I believe these figures will actually be much worse now because of COVID and because of the pandemic. And if you want to know more, there are multiple studies online. However, this put forward the overall vision that provides a clear picture. So Greater Manchester Combined Authority report identified areas of deprivation and the impact of the pandemic, of course, greatly exacerbated this. So here you can see some figures, and if you want to delve in deeper to this, I can send you more information, but we're just going to have a brief stop. So in Manchester, we've got Rochdale and Ashton Canal. The main canal that we'll be following is the Rochdale Canal, and you can see from this map that it goes through Manchester, Failsworth, Oldham and Rochdale. And this is really something that we can build upon with our communities and provide this resource. So what is the Together Fund? So some of you may have heard of the Tackling Inequalities Fund. This was set up in 2020 as part of Canal River Trust's package to help the sport and physical activity sector through the coronavirus. And this is all through Sport England. So this is a targeted fund to deal with recovery. And the Tackling Inequalities Fund was all about getting us through the pandemic. The Together Fund is following this to deal with recovery, trying to alleviate the long-term impacts and facilitating emergence from COVID-19, although that still feels quite far away, doesn't it? But we're focusing on recovery and supporting community organisations to reach and engage their audience in movement, physical activity, and tackling that widening of inequalities in sport and physical activity. So in Sport England, they commissioned physical activity attitudes and behaviours survey, and they found that the pandemic is highlighting the widening gaps in the activity levels across their existing priority audiences. So therefore, in the Together Fund, the target audiences are lower socioeconomic groups, culturally diverse communities, people with disabilities, and people with long-term health conditions. And you probably already work with these groups already, which is why we want to reach you. So as part of the Together Fund, our projects should include delivery on your local Canal River Trust waterways. If you have any questions about finding them, there's lots of information on our website, but you can also contact me or Vicky directly. The project must be located in Manchester, Oldham or Rochdale and aim to reach the Sport England target audiences. So the minimum grant request you can make is 500 and the maximum is 5,000. There's a bit of leeway if there's collaborations as well. So your project should be deliverable within a 6-month timescale from the date you receive the funding and be completed no later than the 31st of March next year. So what the funding can be used for, it can be used for groups to find new ways of keeping active, the instructor costs or staff accredited training, increasing resilience, capacity and capability of the delivery, and professional fees such as interpreters, sport instructors, and equipment, which is a big one as far as cost goes for keeping physically fit. Now, who can apply? It's a bit of a wider area this time, so charity, not-for-profit, CICs, and I'll mention schools later on as well. So the application process, you apply via application form to ourselves. The applications are received on a Monday and will be reviewed internally Wednesday. Your application is then reviewed by an internal panel and then given back to yourself with reviews or amendments to really try to strengthen your application and hopefully make sure it is successful. We then forward all this information on to Sport England, who then make the final decision on the funding. A couple of frequently asked questions. If we've already had funding through Sport England, can we have it again? Yes, is the short answer. So long as the purpose for the Together Fund doesn't duplicate that, it's absolutely fine. So it should be separate from or complementary to any other funding previously gotten from Sport England. So where appropriate, please highlight this in your proposal. Are schools eligible? Yes, schools are eligible, which is fantastic. So they can be the recipients of the funding. However, the activity can't be delivered during curriculum times. It should be delivered before or after school, during lunch times or during holiday periods. You should be looking to ensure any activity is delivered as part of a more sustainable programme of activity rather than a one-off. So while the projects must end or be delivered and the money all spent by next March, we're really looking for sustainability and legacy in your application. So these are some previously funded projects. I'm just wondering, Vicky, would you like to give a little bit of background on one or two of these?
Yeah, sure. So some of these projects are detailed from the very, very first round of funding, and we were still in the early stages of So as much as the fund was created to recover in 2020, as we all know, we were in and out of lockdown, particularly in Pennine, Lancashire. We remained within the highest restrictions. So as part of your application, we are open to repurposing of funding. So that means that we will, the difference from applying for a normal funding application is that we can continue to support you, help to grow that resilience and help to adapt the project as if the pandemic increases again and restrictions increase, your project can adapt over time. So the top project was with an organisation over in Accrington, and it was about a walking project. They came back to us in the second year of our funding, and we built on that with some walk leader training and giving them things like backpacks and first aid kits for their walk leaders. The second project, so we funded this youth organisation as an independent group, and they did some walking and some paddling and cycling. It was such a success and other people wanted to get involved that this is where in the next round of funding, we created a community collaboration. So we had 3 youth groups that came together and we'd funded them all independently. So they all had a range of equipment. Some of them had canoes, some of them had sit on top kayaks, some of their staff had gone through training, but through that collaboration, they began to share those resources, train some extra staff and really grow that project as a community asset. And then the final project, it was all about cycling, walking, and really helping people who may not have the confidence to get out on the canal straight away. So that's the thing, we're saying that some of the projects should include delivery on the canal, but we recognise that being close to water might be a little bit intimidating. So we work with you to find spaces to just grow that confidence and really work with local providers who can help people to grow confidence, and they might have adapted bikes and then grow that confidence and then bring it back onto the canal network. So every project that we funded has been unique and we help you. It's not just a case of sticking an application in and we say yes or no. We will help you to grow that application, look at sustainability, sharing resources across the area, and yeah, continues to support you through that project. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vicky. So what's next? Applications will open this coming Monday, which is brilliant. So what your next step is, this doesn't mean it's the deadline, by the way, this is the opening of applications. So your next step is to fill out an application. And if you have any questions about that, you can ask myself or Vicky or Jane. We need to gather supporting evidence, and once that has been reviewed by our panel, you can then implement changes following the review, which are not expected to be large-scale changes. They're expected to be small things such as perhaps revising safeguarding or revising some of your costs. The most time-consuming part of this will most likely, depending on your project, be costing up your project and going to different providers and seeing how much that will cost you. So following Sport England approval, we're thinking optimistically here, you would deliver your project, and after that and during, you would provide an evaluation. Now, these evaluations are quite easy. We encourage everyone to be surveying their participants as their project goes on, but there is also a Sport England survey that we would send to the community groups following this. There are also case studies that we'd like you to fill out, which again, we can help you with these. So application forms are a Word document with answers and tables that will expand as you type. Now, there is a separate document of help notes that we will provide, which should help you go through this and explain everything you may have questions about. It is about 6 or 7 pages, but there's also explanation in there as well. So each application must be accompanied with some supporting evidence, which is quite basic for most funding bodies, which is a bank statement. And through this is the evidence of 2 signatories required for withdrawal. And this could be detailed in constitution, a bank letter, screenshot, etc. Any questions about this, feel free to get in touch. The safeguarding children and vulnerable adults policy. This is absolutely essential because we need to know that you have the structures in place to protect people as they take part, a constitution, Risk assessment of the project activities. Now, they are happy to accept a draft document, but also if you've never written risk assessments before, or you're perhaps unsure of what should be included, we are very, very used to writing risk assessments, so please ask for help. We need a copy of your public liability insurance certificate. Your group needs public liability insurance up to 10 million. However, if you do not have this, this does not mean you can't apply. You can just build it into your funding bid, which is excellent because not everyone has that public liability insurance up to that. So what if you need help? What if you're not sure if the policy is good enough, not sure how to write a risk assessment, or you don't understand the application form? Perhaps your access to IT isn't ideal, or perhaps you're not quite sure how to edit a document. Ask us. We're very, very approachable, I promise. What I'm going to do at the end of this is pop in my email address and phone number in the below, and with Laura's permission, I will also email you the slides for this presentation, the application form, and the help notes. But please feel free to get in touch with any questions you may have. We're here to help. We're here to help you expand, because we know that the impact that you have on our communities is amazingly large and positive, and we want to work with you to help you realize that impact. So that brings the end of the recording part of the presentation. I'd like to open up the field to questions, and so I can see you, I'm going to stop sharing.